Will you remark? Senator Markley.
Thank you, Madam President. My colleagues have raised a series of questions and objections and doubts about this program, and also advantages and concerns that would be addressed. There's the matter of the integrity of the documents that would be involved in obtaining these licenses, as was discussed at some length by Senator McLaughlin and others. I share some of his concerns, especially about the consular documents, which have come up as a means of identification, which there seems to be evidence to have severe doubts about. There's been the matter of the practical effects of putting this law into place in terms of the cost and the potential burden it might place on the Department of Motor Vehicles. There's the matters of safety that were brought up by Senator Meyer earlier this evening, and by others, I think a very legitimate concern, something that Senator Crisco has mentioned to me informally as we sit aside one another over the last few days. And finally, there's the fact of the overwhelming opposition of the people of the state, according to polls. And I would say in my own experience and the correspondence I've received, the opposition that I've heard in my own district. These practical considerations, let's say, can be argued, and they can be addressed. They can be addressed in the course of the formation of the regulation. They can be answered in other ways. I'll lay them aside. It's not on the basis of those things that I will cast my vote. I oppose this legislation because I believe firmly in the essential importance of citizenship. And I believe there's no other ground on which we can meet but as citizens of the United States. As citizens, we are equal. We stand on the same principles. We stand devoted to the same flag. We are subject to the same laws, and we are entitled to the same rights and the same protections. You know, recently I think of Senator Crisco again because his group that governs the Connecticut Hall of Fame in their last class admitted, to my mind, the greatest hero that this state has produced, Roger Sherman, really a giant among the founders. And let me say about Roger Sherman that he was a shoemaker for the first 20 or more years of his life. And he was never a man of great property. He was a man who always scraped by. And yet he went to Philadelphia to the Continental Congress and was assigned, along with Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, to write the Declaration of Independence. He stood in that room as an equal to those men because he was a citizen as they were, and there was no higher status to be held. I think that was a day in which we perhaps best understood the glory of that kind of equality. And I believe we have to prize that notion of citizenship and not promulgate a set of laws that creates a substratum, a second-class citizenship of sorts that is not entitled to the same rights and privileges and obligations that we are as citizens. You know, I will say from personal experience, I feel that I have seen that society in some ways when I have visited Los Angeles, a place I've been sometimes, a place that fascinates me. It's like a foreign country, a different flora and fauna, a different light on the landscape, a different place in many ways. And I think most disquietingly, in the sense in which I see it as a kind of a dual society, separate and not equal, a society in which one class sits and eats and the other class serves, divided, as I see it, by language, by culture, by legal status, and worst of all, I believe, by opportunity. By opportunity. That is what we can't deny people, full and equal opportunity. That is not the future I want to see for this state and this country. But it's where I believe we're headed if we continue to treat the symptoms of the immigration problem that we have, instead of addressing and applying the cure. And I believe that citizenship is the only cure, the only path that can make us whole as a society, equal as Americans, and truly brothers and sisters beneath this flag as we need to be. And I know that the path to citizenship is a hard road. For years, I taught citizenship classes every Saturday, 5.5 hours at a stretch. If it was hard for me, it was harder on those good people that sat there and heard me rehearse the entire history of the country and every aspect of the government at that length. And as you can imagine, I loved doing it. I loved sharing that history and those principles which I care so deeply about. And I loved the students who embraced that history, who engaged with the history, argued with me about it, but who were willing to become a part of it, to take up their role in it, and who sacrificed from their scant leisure time and from their limited means to go through that process so that they could join us as full and equal citizens of the United States of America. I believe to extend privileges without granting rights simply aggravates an injustice. And I think in the end it will hurt the very people that we intend this evening to help. I think it's wrong-headed, and it's a mistake that I cannot support. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator France.